Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Stephon Diggs, Dalvin Cook, Devontae Adams, Najee Harris, and Travis Kelce. This was a really good round one this year. I mean, in terms of advance rate and stuff like that, I've got on screen here, you can see that 7 of the 12 players actually had positive advance rates. And there weren't too many letdowns from this group. Again, looking at fantasy points over expected, we've got here, but it was only really Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris who really stunk things up a lot. And you can kind of look at both those running backs. They both had injuries. They both dealt with quarterback changes and offensive line issues. I was kind of in the camp that CMC had a high ceiling than Jonathan Taylor coming into the year. But I think the arguments were fair one way or the other. Whereas Najee Harris felt like somebody who always looked like he could be one of the worst picks of the first round. What was your kind of feel going into the year about how these two running backs could perform? And if you were looking ahead to 2023, how do you feel about them going forward?
What happened for Jonathan Taylor is an easy explanation. He just got injured. But once he returned from injury, even under Jeff Saturday, he became an every touch back. He reached 20 carries in every single game under Saturday until he got injured. So I'm not really worried about Jonathan Taylor's usage. I would imagine whatever new coach, whatever new OC they bring in, whatever new quarterback they also bring in will feature one of the best running backs in the league. I think that's pretty logical. If Jeff Saturday can get there, I'm sure a lot of other people can get there. So Jonathan Taylor, I would imagine, is going to go the route of Saquon Barkley, where early on Saquon Barkley last year, I should say, because early on people may draft him like early second, mid-second, and then they're going to catch up to speed really quickly and understand that he should be jammed into the mid to end first round. And so that's kind of where I'm handling Jonathan Taylor. Najee Harris went the way we basically expected him to. And honestly, you can look and say, well, he did average just 51 rushing yards per game. 40 rushing yards per game on that injured foot until the team's bye. And then by every advanced metric possible, in his last 9 games, he averaged 75 rushing yards, was just so much more efficient and explosive over the second half of the season. Also reached 20 carries in 5 of those games, didn't reach 20 carries in a single game before the bye. So he was clearly healthier and handling a larger workload as well. But coming into the year, we knew his volume wasn't going to sustain in a quarterback change in a new offense, just because the way Ben Roethlisberger threw is why Harris saw 40% of his targets at or behind the line of scrimmage in 2021. Like, that was never going to be the case with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, because no one was just going to dump the ball off like Roethlisberger's dead arm allowed Harris to reach these catch totals. So, yeah, it went as expected. We'll see what happens for the Steelers. It sounds like they are bringing Matt Canada back, so we're expecting some of the same offense, which isn't necessarily good for Najee Harris, but it's going to depend where his ADP lies, and if people are drafting him for his first half of the year or the second half of the year is when I'll dive in.
How much does Jaylen Warren really worry you going forward? So, I know we're kind of retrospect really, but it just feels so tied to it. That was where the problem came from, because for years, people would talk about how Mike Tomlin always wanted to lean onto just one running back. Mm-hmm. And then this year we saw that Jaylen Warren really stole a good work opportunity in that backfield. And spinning forward, I know people are going to be very hesitant to draft Najee Harris in 2023, but do you feel like Najee Harris can retake that job and be the sort of round one running back that we saw last year?
But if they felt confident enough to split Harris's workload down the stretch, and remember, this was nearly a playoff team down the stretch, and Najee and Jaylen Warren did reach double-digit touches in 2 of his last 4 games, and that was with this team competing. So if that's the case, you would imagine he's still going to be a nuisance in 2023. At the same time, though, again, I'm going to let ADP dictate how I handle Najee Harris moving forward, because I don't expect him to be a bad pick, but it will, in my opinion, resemble a poor man's version of Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. Not necessarily a David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert situation, but Zeke and Pollard is what I'm looking at. If that's the case, maybe Warren provides some sneaky standalone value for at least best ball, not redraft. I can't imagine being the situation where I would start him if Harris is in, but best ball, sure. I think Warren as well should be looked at as a late round pick.
Okay, so looking at the rest of the first round, Christian McCaffrey, he really, once he got to San Francisco, he really showed that ceiling. He had the second most catches amongst running backs, 18.4 points per game as second most. Yeah, 7 top 5 weekly finishes. He did exactly what we hoped he could do if he stayed healthy, and he did stay healthy. Austin Eckler finishes the RB1 in total fantasy points, 22 more receptions than any other running back. And again, he had a great season, in part because of the issues in the Chargers offense. Justin Jefferson was incredible. I mean, if you drafted Justin Jefferson, you were a really happy manager. You basically had a free square filled in straight off the bat. After that, like Cooper Kupp, even his advance rates were kind of okay because nobody in this first round separated very well. It was like a lot of the first round talents had little issues where like they'd miss a couple of games or bits like that. But one player who really did separate from the rest of his position was Travis Kelce. The tight end won 15.9 half PPR points per game, scored 4.9 points more than the next nearest tight end. Should we have seen this coming, John? I mean, we're going back to last year. Patrick Mahomes lost Tyreek Hill, and there was no real indication that Travis Kelce had completely gone off a cliff edge. Yeah, some of his metrics had dipped off a little bit, but we knew he was going to be elite, and then he just was dominant this year.
And we tried citing, some of us, and fading him, the age curve, the age apex. But honestly, the rest of the position was so useless that it didn't even matter. It just gave you a clear, as you mentioned, structural advantage to draft Travis Kelce. I think even headed into next year, the same structural advantage exists. Thus, you are either taking Travis Kelce as a top 3, top 4 pick, or you're laying off and waiting for tight end till late with a 3 tight end build, hoping for spike weeks.
Completely makes sense. On FFPC, where we're talking about tight end premium, the first drafts are going on already, and seems to be sitting around that 3-4 position in the first round. Is that somewhere you'd feel comfortable taking him?
Absolutely. He definitely has an argument ahead of the top 2 running backs, as you mentioned, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, if only because Christian McCaffrey, we've seen throughout the playoffs as well. They don't mind, for rest purposes, scaling him back. If they're in blowout situation, I'd imagine it's be the same next year, whether it's Trey Lance or Brock Purdy starting for the 49ers, because we are very unclear of that situation right now, honestly. And then, yes, just the overall advantage he would give after Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chases of the world, maybe Cooper Kupp is back up there as well. I can definitely see myself leaning on Travis Kelce yet again as a top 3 pick.